Welcome again to another episode of Triple Threat Wrestling presents the SmackDown Highlight Show. My name is Jarvis Sam, also known as the Wrestling Brother. If this is your first time with us, or if you're a repeat visitor and you have not smashed that like and subscribe button, I implore you to do that now. Smash that like and subscribe button. Also, hit that notification bell so that each and every time we drop a new episode, you are the first to know. Now, let's get into the SmackDown Highlight Show. This week's episode of SmackDown came to us from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Now, Montreal, Quebec, Canada is almost anywhere in Canada. Normally, the crowds are just electric. A lot of times, JR and King would refer to it as Bizarro Land because it would be where the heels would get cheered and the baby faces might get booed, or the hometown heroes, no matter what, always got cheered. This is where we saw in Toronto many years ago, we saw the crowd turn Hulk Hogan babyface and The Rock heel in that match. Like, things like that happen in Canada. I can assure you that did not happen on this episode of SmackDown. Now, in this new 3-hour iteration of SmackDown, as I mentioned last week, they have been good shows. They've been decent shows. They still felt every bit of the 3 hours, but it was a largely enjoyable 3 hours. Last night's show felt like an eternity. There just were segments and pointless matches and things that just and they're also going to be in the same Rogers Center tonight for Saturday night's main event. And yes, sometimes when WWE does a city back-to-back nights, a lot of times they do phone it in on the more irrelevant show. And in this case, WWE feels that the more irrelevant show between a Saturday night's main event and a SmackDown Live is going to be the SmackDown Live. So that was the show that got phoned in. But again, it's one of those things where just a couple of small tweaks would have livened the show up a lot. But if you've been watching WWE Unreal, you know that there's a lot of gaps in that creative team. And we know that Road Dogg is a part of that team. And so you understand why we end up getting some of these goofy and nonsensical segments and matches. But we'll get into all of that. Sami Zayn kicked off. He comes down to the ring, gets a nice ovation. This is probably the loudest the crowd got the entire night because he's the hometown guy. And truly, really and truly, he should have been in the main event tonight too, but I'll get into that a little later. He comes out and pretty much says, hey, I'm going to win tomorrow night, and I'm going to punch my ticket to the Royal Rumble and face Drew McIntyre. Trick Williams quickly comes out and says, hey, we're not the same. Basically saying that, hey, I'm here, you're down here, you're average, I'm a mega star, and I'm going to win, and I'm going to go on to be WWE champion. That's why I'm here. Damian Priest then comes out. Of course, Damian and Trick Williams are going to be in the main event tonight. But they're also kind of building this segment for the Fatal 4-Way. So there's just a bunch of back and forth between the three of them. Eventually, backstage, Trick Williams attacked Damian Priest, and Sami kind of got involved. And so later, backstage, Sami Zayn then says, hey, I don't like what happened out there. Uh, and he to Damian Priest, and he's like, look, man, he's like, if I got your back out there tonight. And Damian Priest is like, look, man, you stuck your nose into too many people's business, and I don't like it, so you stay out of my match. And then Sami Zayn's like, look, you don't tell me what to do. So it's kind of foreshadowing what's going to end up happening later in the night. Next, we had the U.S. Open Challenge, and yet again, it's accepted by Ilya Dragunov. This match, while these two always deliver with a great match, this match did not need to happen so fast because you're just coming off Ilya Dragunov losing to Sami Zayn. You had Ilya Dragunov recently lose the U.S. Championship to Carmelo Hayes in a challenge that you issued. So now you're kind of like on the losing streak now. If you lose Ilya Dragunov, and then if you take the belt off of Carmelo Hayes, what does that then say about Carmelo Hayes' U.S. Championship run? Right now, we know when you do open challenges, it kind of puts a limit on how long somebody's probably going to be champion because they're defending it every single week. And I know that to some people, this can be the highlight of the show because it's typically the best match, the best worked match because they put on bangers. Like it's always Carmelo Hayes or whoever's that U.S. champion versus another person that's a great worker in the ring. And so they go out there and they put on a 2 or 3 segment match that, yeah, it's going to be match of the night because you're just flying around doing flips and this, that, and the third, having the high spots and the false finishes until finally the winner is goes over, right? Well, this was another one of those. This time, The Miz gets involved, punches Ilya Dragunov. It sets up Carmelo Hayes for his nothing but net finish. Carmelo wins. Carmelo's not happy that Miz interfered in this matchup. I'm assuming that's setting up for the open challenge for next week or what have you. So I guess in that instance, it kind of protects Ilya from not suffering another clean loss, but there could have been a million other challengers that could have accepted this matchup and had a match with Carmelo Hayes and Carmelo goes over instead of going back to Ilya and Carmelo Hayes. But this is what they chose to go with. Whatever. Let's see where it goes. Again, you're now inserting the Miz back into something with Carmelo Hayes. I think Carmelo Hayes needs to be as far away from Miz as possible, but it is what it is. So next we get this segment between Jacob Fatu and Cody Rhodes. This is probably the best segment on the show. In this segment, we saw them backstage. The tension and the heat feels real in this match, in this feud, I should say, going into this match. And I think it's going to be an amazing, it can be probably the best match on the show, the most compelling match on the show, even though I think the card for Saturday Night's main event, which I'll get into in a little bit, is great. I think these two have the opportunity to steal the show. Well, between this and the Fatal 4-Way, but I think this match can really do wonders. I do think Jacob Fatu needs to go over here, and then that can add that little wrinkle in Cody's character that kind of springboards this character shift that we've been seeing reported that he's going to have a shift in his character. I think that is what can help. But in this segment, Cody Rhodes is basically saying, "Hey, Jacob, you've never even had a championship match. Like it's we're not the same, dude. Like, come on, man." And Jacob is like, "Hey, people haven't taken me seriously. They think that I'm unhinged and all the things, but you're gonna see a different side of Jacob Fatu." And so I think this is a perfect catalyst to pushing Jacob Fatu to this next level that everybody is saying that he needs to get to. And this is also a catalyst to also getting Cody Rhodes that new layer in his character that he so desperately needs right now. We had Jade Cargill versus Chelsea Green. Jade Cargill goes over. I don't understand how Jade Cargill has been champion for what, over 2 months now. I don't think she's had a single title defense whatsoever. She's been in action, she's been in these matches, but not in an actual championship match. Again, it goes back to what I've been talking about. All the relevant and good competitors that could be going for the main women's championships are lumped in this tag team division. And so now you are stuck with the B, C, and D players on SmackDown and on Raw for that matter. We had and she's going over on all these matches. I would almost rather see this become a women's championship open challenge or something to where these random women are coming up and challenging for the championship, and Jade is taking them out. I would rather see that than the U.S. Open challenge at this point. I think that would be a great tool to build up Jade Cargill. And then, because we had Jordan Grace was out there with Chelsea Green, right? And so there's obviously they're trying to build towards those two, but it's weird. Eventually, Adam Pearce says that Jordan Grace is going to be in the Royal Rumble, and so I, I don't understand how they're going to get to these two getting into a match, and if it's just going to be blown off on a Saturday night's main event on a SmackDown. It's probably just going to be a SmackDown main event 1 week, and Jordan Grace is going to lose because we're obviously on the path towards Jade versus Bianca. But again, build up Jade, get her some championship wins, not just she's in action tonight against Chelsea Green. And I think Chelsea Green can be elevated to that next level. But again, if you've been watching WWE and real, you see that they have her pegged at a certain level. And when you're pegged at a certain level, that's where you're going to be until the crowd absolutely demands it. So they've got her pegged as like, a B minus player. So that's what she's going to get. She's never going to be in that top tier until the fans demand it, if the fans demand it. Oh boy. Then we got the Wyatt Six versus the MFTs. We had Solo and Tamatanga representing the MFTs. I'm not going to go too far into this, but the MFTs go over. So Solo and Tamatanga do capture the WWE Tag Team Championships. I'm assuming they're going to continue this feud with the Wyatt Six. I, again, there's so much more that can be done with both of these factions, but what they're doing just isn't working. I think Solo Sikoa has all the time. At this point, I almost wish the MFTs would just turn on him, kick him out, him go babyface, and go on a run because he can talk on the mic. I think he can hold his own as a solo star at this point, and I'm just afraid that being with this middle of the card faction that none of these guys are over except him is not a good look. Then we had the most pointless promo of Drew McIntyre's probably last 4 years. He pretty much just he's just showing face. It's just like, hey, Canada, I'm here. He buried the Montreal Canadiens, saying they haven't had a Stanley Cup in over 30 years. But at least, with him, they get to be in the presence of a champion, the typical heel drawing heat promo. He's going to be watching the Fatal 4-Way match tomorrow. It doesn't matter who it's going to be, blah, 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 blah. Let's move on. We had a triple threat women's tag team match to identify the new number one contenders for the women's tag team championships. This was Lash Legend and Nia Jax versus Alexa and Charlotte versus Kiana James and Julia. Kiana James and Julia go over. Now, having said that, you would think it would be a foregone conclusion with the heels going with a heel team going over that it would be a shoe-in that tomorrow night Io and Rhea go over, but you never know because they don't mind doing heel versus heel, especially when Julia's involved. So we'll see what happens. But they go over. It was what it was. It was a decent match. Um, I guess they're trying to put a little steam behind Julia and Kiana James. Julia's already the U.S. champion again, so now it's a matter of is she going to become a double champion now in the next few weeks? We'll see. Finally, we had the main event: Trick Williams versus Damian Priest. Now, this match should have been Trick Williams versus Sami Zayn. You're in Montreal. You've got Trick Williams, who is this this guy that has all this charisma and everything you need to be a good heel. and you put him against Damian Priest, who is a babyface. But let's be honest, the crowd doesn't give a shit about Damian Priest. They don't really. When he comes out, no one hates him. He's not getting booed out of the building. He's not getting the Roman Reigns, he was getting as a corny babyface. He just gets, a couple of scattered applause, but you're not gonna get that heartfelt emotion from the audience with Damian Priest. When you have him in there with the guy that you want to be this superstar heel, it just falls flat. And and to me, this was not fair to Trick Williams. You gotta put him in there with a super hot baby face. There's no super hotter baby face than a Sami Zayn in Canada. You brought him out, you had him face off. That should have been your main event. Yes, you want to protect both guys. It can end in disqualification. There's a million ways to get out of this match, especially when you've got Randy Orton and you've got Damian Priest that can come in and interfere and help build hype for tomorrow night's main event. But instead, you get a dead crowd. This crowd was dead to the point you could hear Trick Williams calling spots, which he better fix that quickly. You could hear him calling spots to the point where you could hear Trick Williams literally ask the referee, "How much time we got?" That's how quiet the crowd was. Now, granted, you've got to remember, Trick Williams has been in TNA recently. He spent a lot of time in NXT. Those crowds are much smaller, but much louder. So he's used to working with a smaller crowd that's just going crazy. And now he's working in front of 10,000 people that aren't saying a damn thing. That match, it ended in DQ. Sami Zayn comes down and, he interferes in the match as they foreshadowed earlier. Again, just building the hype for tonight's matchup between him and between the Fatal Four Way, Randy Orton, Trick Williams, Damian Priest, Randall Keith Orton. That's what they're building towards. So we got no finish in the match, which is honestly the right call. You don't want to beat Trick Williams, which is something I was afraid of. I was afraid that they were going to have Damian, beat him tonight when I thought it when they announced the match last week. But they got out of the match fine. But again, if you're going to have that finish, do it the right way. Have him versus the hometown hero. That's the match you want. That should be headlining a hometown episode of SmackDown when you're trying to establish a guy like Trick Williams as a top heel in the business. Overall, this show sucked. It was 3 hours and it felt like 6 hours, if we're being honest. We've got to do better. We've got to do better. I get it. And this is your go home show for a network event that's tomorrow that you can be building. Again, just a few minor changes. Trick Williams ends up facing Sami Zayn. Huge. That in itself is a shift in momentum. You could have had Miz versus Carmelo Hayes instead of Dragunov, and then you could have had maybe Dragunov face Kit Wilson or something. They bring Kit Wilson out, right? Just a few little changes. You can have maybe Damian Priest and Randy Orton in a tag team match against somebody, and just build it that way, right? I get that you probably have to have the faction warfare for that. That can be your throwaway match. I think the triple threat tag team match can absolutely stay on the show. Jade Cargill, again, why not have an open challenge for the world championship since she has not had it? And then that's how you can build a more exciting show with basically the same players that you had and have similar outcomes, but it just feels a little bit better. So tonight we've got Saturday night's main event. We've got 4 matches now. As we just got announced tonight, AJ Styles, that's one thing I forgot to mention. AJ Styles showed up on SmackDown because he wanted to work out a deal with Nick Aldis that He wants to face, I guess, some people that he's had memorable feuds with on his way out. So he got a match tomorrow night or tonight with Shinsuke Nakamura. So we'll get Shinsuke Nakamura versus AJ Styles. They had some matches, I guess, several years ago. I think this is when Shinsuke won the Royal Rumble. He ended up facing AJ Styles at Mania and lost. Those matches were highly lackluster, in my opinion. All I really remember is a bunch of low blows. And if that's all that you remember from it, it can't be all that memorable. But I do know that they have history from New Japan. So I know that these two like to work together. So that should be a decent match tomorrow night or tonight. Whenever you're watching this, it could be yesterday or whatever by the time you're watching this. But Saturday night's main event, that is going to be one of the featured matches. We're also going to have Rhea Ripley and Io Sky taking on Liv and Roxanne Perez. We're going to have the fatal four-way match to determine the number one contender who will face Drew McIntyre at the Royal Rumble. And that's Trick Williams versus Sami Zayn versus Damian Priest versus Randall Keith Orton. And then we have Jacob Fatu versus Cody Rhodes. Let me give you my quick picks. I think AJ Styles has to go over versus Shinsuke Nakamura. He is going into a career-threatening match against Gunther at the Royal Rumble, so there's no way he can lose to Shinsuke Nakamura, who's been floating around the mid-card and losing U.S. title open matches recently. Um, Fatal four-way match, again, Trick Williams, Sami Zayn, Damian Priest, Randall Keith Orton. I think Sami Zayn has to go over. He has to have his Montreal moment. He's going to go over by probably pitting Damian Priest, is my prediction. Then we have Cody versus Jacob Fatu. My heart is with Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu needs to win this match. So that's my pick. However, I would not be surprised if they continue to protect Cody and have Cody go over. But it does no one any favors if Cody goes over. So I'm going with Jacob Fatu. And then finally, we got Rhea Ripley, Io Sky versus Liv and Roxanne. I would love to see Liv and Roxanne dethroned, and that maybe starts a dissension between Rhea and Io. But again, we saw Julia and Kiana James win, so I think that's foreshadowing. We're going to get a match between them and Rhea and Io Sky, because if not, you're going to end up turning Liv and Roxanne babyface against those two. Anyway, those are my predictions. That's my thoughts on SmackDown. If you have different thoughts, if you thought this episode of SmackDown cooked, let me know in the comments. If you totally disagree with SmackDown or the Saturday Night's main event predictions or anything we talked about on SmackDown, let me know in the comments, man. I'm open to hearing anything. Maybe you saw something on SmackDown I didn't see that made it, mind bending and compelling. I don't think so, but if you did, I would love to hear. Anyway, drop that down in the comments. And we also have the affiliates link down below in the comment or in the description box. If you are in the market for any WWE merch, maybe you want a belt, maybe you want whatever, click the affiliate link and purchase it. It's no additional charge to you, but it supports our channel and keeps good content coming your way. Again, if you made it this far, that means you like what you heard. That means you want to come back. So smash and that like and subscribe button. Smash the notification bell so that you know every time we drop. And yes, I'll be back next week with another SmackDown Highlight Show.